just scattered around the edge of the plane. Those instantly would have deployed the foam, and the obvious danger would have been a fire as that police came down. Now, we're just hearing from the London Ambulance Service as I speak that they sent 6 ambulances and 2 response cars, and they are reporting 3 minor injuries in what they saw there happening at Heathrow. So 3 people receiving minor injuries, being checked out, and they then go on to talk about their various deployments, but perhaps we'll return to that now as we continue to watch these pictures and look at this plane. It's a Boeing 777 plane, and clearly Nick Gray was talking about how all of the passengers now off the plane. Let me bring in Louisa Baldini, our correspondent, who's here with me. And you, Louisa, have been pulling all the strands of information that now are coming in all of the time. Now, as we look at that plane, we were hearing a little earlier about the Prime Minister's plane that has been delayed, and a little more detail about that has come in from Nick Robinson, I think. That's right. Nick Robinson, our political editor, is actually on board the plane with the Prime Minister, and they are now held at Heathrow Airport, obviously unable to fly. One of the most concrete pieces of information we've got was from air traffic control, and that is that one of the runways is now closed as a result of this incident. Now, on the Prime Minister's flight, he's visiting China and India. Are a number of businessmen accompanying him, including the chairman of Virgin Airways, Sir Richard Branson, and ministers including the Trade Minister, Lord Digby Jones. Now, they expect they're going to be delayed for half an hour, but of course it's quite possible that they may be waiting there for a lot longer. When I spoke to BAA, the company that runs the airport, just before coming up here to the studio, they wouldn't actually say what had happened, but now, as we've seen from the pictures, it's quite clear that this Boeing 777 has landed short of the runway. We could even see those skid marks there on the grass. Yes, these pictures absolutely tell their own story in terms of this British Airways aircraft, where it's ended up, just clear the force, obviously, as it has struck the ground, and presumably, I think also given the direction that we saw of how the skid marks were showing, spun around as well, and that perhaps may explain why there was so much damage to the wing area. Let us also bring in Tom Simons, our transport correspondent, who is here with us now. Tom, presumably you've been talking to your various contacts. What is the latest that you are hearing?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, these pictures which really tell us what has happened. If we, just to give you some idea of the layout there, the checkerboard shape which we just saw the helicopter crew pick up on, just at the end of the runway, is roughly where the pilot, if he was carrying out a normal handheld landing, himself flying the plane rather than the autopilot, would roughly aim for, just a bit beyond that. The plane has clearly touched down some hundreds of feet before that. You can see 2 wheel marks, I think, in the grass before the aircraft's position is clear from the drag marks through the grass and then off to the side of the runway. Now, what I think is remarkable is that that plane has stopped in a very short space. You can see the space exactly there on your screens. Less than half a mile, possibly even a quarter of a mile. The pilot doing, from the early viewing, a remarkable job really in keeping the plane almost facing down the runway, and therefore minimising the damage that would have been done to the airframe of the aircraft, the wings and the bodywork of the aircraft, and therefore saving lives and preventing injuries, because that's what causes the lives to be lost.
Absolutely. Just a quick word about the activities now at Heathrow concerning, of course, all the other runways, all the other flights.
We have heard that the south runway is closed, but I'm not sure that's the case with the north runway.
It's not clear from these pictures which runway we're looking at, and I haven't had a chance to just try and have a look here. Yeah, that looks like the southern runway. So the southern runway where the incident, it looks to be happening. Crane my neck round here. It's difficult to tell. But just to say that if Heathrow, even one of Heathrow's runways are out of action, then that's going to cause severe disruption to the airport. This is an airport that relies very, very heavily, as we've said in the past on News 24, on there being 2 runways. Those runways being very heavily operated flights every 45 seconds or so, the disruption will be very severe.
Tom, stay with us, because I think we can just speak to another eyewitness now. I believe we've got Steve Bell on the line, who was driving along the M4. Steve, can you hear us here in the studio?
Yes, I can.
Just tell us, if you can, exactly what you saw.
Well, I was driving on the road running parallel to the runway, stopped at a set of traffic lights, and then as we pulled away, I saw this plane come to an abrupt end at the end of the runway and sort of turn about 90 degrees.
Is it clear that this plane was in difficulty as it was coming in?
Well, I couldn't actually see it come down the runway. There's like a blockade that stops you from looking up the runway on the perimeter road. But as I just passed that blockade, I saw it come to a complete halt, so I don't really know.
Now, we're seeing pictures that obviously you can't, Steve, but certainly the plane has encountered some damage to its underside. Did you hear a crash?
Well, I heard a sort of scraping noise, metal on tarmac, and saw that the right-hand side engine was damaged in some way. I couldn't see if it was fire damage or tarmac damage, but it was, yeah, I heard it sort of screech along the tarmac and stop, and then as it stopped, it kind of spun round about 90 degrees.
Now, I'm not really sure of the geography and where the M4 is as to in relation to the airfield, but was it a frightening experience for you? Did you sort of see this plane coming towards you?
Yeah, I mean, driving on that perimeter road, you see the planes come over all the time, and you know, to actually see one come to a stop under obviously emergency conditions, it's quite unusual. You don't see it every day.
Now stay with us, Steve, because we're just, for the purpose of people just joining us here on News 24, we're just talking to an eyewitness who saw a plane coming into Heathrow which landed short of the runway. You can see the pictures there of that plane where it's come to rest. It skidded across the grass. You can see the skid marks just behind it, and the emergency services have very quickly got passengers off that plane.
Let me just add, because we were talking to Tom about how this is impacting all the other flights that obviously come in and out of Heathrow. A spokesman for the air traffic control company, NATS, has said that planes were still taking off and landing at Heathrow under a single runway operation using the northern runway. Obviously, delays are expected, but one runway is clearly working. The area around that plane obviously is now not, and of course you will see that plane there for some while, so I suspect that is going to be the case for some hours. But clearly there are contingencies at Heathrow for exactly an occasion like this, and a spokesman for air traffic control saying that planes are still taking off and landing at Heathrow under a single runway, and that seems to fit in exactly what the Reuters news agency was also reporting, that although the south runway is closed, the north runway is still operating. Well, as we continue to watch these pictures and the scenes and activity around this stricken plane, let's bring in Louisa Baldini again, who's monitoring all the different strands of information coming in from so many different areas now. And Louisa, clearly the pictures tell, well, very much a lot of the story here.
It looks like it must have been a very dramatic incident indeed, and London Heathrow Airport officials are now confirming and calling this an emergency landing. They say it happened at 12:42. Now, I understand that this BA Flight 38 from Beijing was due to land